Alright guys, I'm back and I'm going to go straight to it. I'm going to talk about the biggest fight that everyone wants to see, which is the Floyd Mayweather versus Manny Pacquiao fight. Now, this topic is not itself as in the fight as in what could happen instead of the fight. I have a feeling that the fight might not go through, and I have my reasons. No, not necessarily any sources, but it's just the way it will make more sense to take moves if you were Floyd Mayweather. And I say that because Floyd Mayweather is the most powerful fighter in the game right now. Not necessarily the most powerful person, but definitely one of the most powerful in general. And he is the number one in boxing. Number two being Manny Pacquiao. Now, Floyd Mayweather has 2 fights left under Showtime contract. 2 fights left. That means he has to take those 2 fights and fight in Showtime. Afterwards, he's saying he's going to retire, but he doesn't have to. He can just make another contract with Showtime or HBO or whatever, or just have one more fight. It doesn't matter. But he has 2 he has to accomplish by the end of the year. Now, in those 2 fights, it would be perfect if he fights Manny Pacquiao in May, and then rematch, win or lose. I would say it wouldn't even matter. I would do a rematch if I was him, if I won or lost, especially if he lost. But if you want, I would do a rematch because the first fight is big. The second fight would be even bigger. Now, with those 2 fights taking up his contract, it would be perfect for him to retire. But there's other moves to take in this scenario. For example, he there's a lot of talk right now of him facing Cotto. It looks like Manny Pacquiao and him is falling through, which is kind of sad. But it looks like it might not happen with such hard negotiations going on between the two camps. If it wasn't hard enough being Manny Pacquiao and Floyd, and both of them being the two powerhouses that they also had to negotiate networks. Manny fights under HBO, and Floyd fights under Showtime, and they're both exclusive to those networks. And Manny's exclusive to Top Rank, and Floyd basically works with himself with Mayweather Promotions and associates with whatever fighter is under whatever company. But Manny is on record on saying multiple times now in multiple media saying that he and his promoter has agreed to everything that Floyd as the man did. And Floyd recently went in an interview saying that what has Manny agreed to, he has no say in this. He's just a pawn in this chessboard, which I think is kind of ridiculous to say because it's not like they're gonna tell Manny, oh, you had to fight this fighter, and he's just gonna agree. Manny has a say in things. When Manny says he agrees, it means that like, oh, he whatever Floyd wants, he will do, but Floyd wants money. This is the problem. The problem is money, just like on almost everything in the world. Money is a problem in this. Floyd wants a bigger cut, and Bob Arum, basically Top Rank, isn't going to let that happen. Manny doesn't care. That's why Manny been on saying that he will fight for free if he has to, it doesn't matter. He doesn't care, but his promoter does care. His promoter is the one that's also getting the cut out of this, and that's why Mayweather doesn't have that problem. That's why he always says he's his own boss, because Floyd Mayweather calls the shots. He doesn't have to deal with the promoter. Now, another problem would be with the networks, pay-per-view revenue. The networks are also going to want to cut. And Showtime and Mayweather want a big cut, especially Mayweather, and Top Rank and HBO want a big cut as well. That's what, from what I have read in multiple outlets, that is a big issue right now. That it's not necessarily the terms of agreement, is how much money everyone's gonna get. That's why recently all the CEOs from Showtime and HBO and Top Rank and everyone else have met up in a disclosed location, supposedly in a restaurant, discussing um, the agreements upon the networks. Now, that's what supposedly Mayweather is holding off onto until there's an agreement between both sides, and that's why Manny has said that he has signed his contract and he's waiting for Floyd to sign it. Which I don't know. I don't know how much truth there is to it. I mean, it's not like we can ask for a contract and then they're gonna show it to us. I mean, we could, but I doubt we're gonna get one anyway. But essentially, this fight doesn't seem like it's gonna go through, especially with Floyd Mayweather recently tweeting a link to a video that I believe Fight Hype did, and Arisa talking on Floyd's behalf and basically saying what's gonna happen. And in that video, Arisa said that the fight's not gonna happen, that Bob's the problem, and they make it seem like, oh, Bob's the one that doesn't necessarily want the fight to happen. That's in itself. Like, he really does not want this fight. But they're saying it like that because I think when they say Bob Arum is a problem, is because Bob is fighting for part of the money. Floyd is asking for too much money, even though he is the A side, which there's no doubt in that. He's asking for too much money. I think a 60 on Floyd's behalf and a 40 on Manny's behalf is good. Anything more or less is an insult on their behalf. And I feel like Floyd is asking for too much, and that's not fair considering Manny is a star. He's the second highest pay-per-view there is. So it's not financially good for Manny's side of the table. And that's why they say that Bob Arum's in the way. Think of it like this: if there was no Bob negotiating for Manny's behalf, they would leave Manny broke essentially, and that's why Manny is a promoter to deal with all that money talk, and that's why Floyd doesn't have one because he likes to deal with the money. He likes to make the most money as possible. That's the difference. Now, I don't feel like this fight's gonna go through as much as I wanted, as much as I've been waiting for this fight to go through. I feel like it might not. So I went ahead and thought of scenarios that Floyd could take, which are in a way just as good. He could fight Miguel Cotto for a rematch at a catchweight at middleweight, which is I think what he's considering. Doing this would have him fight and potentially win in another weight division, capturing the middleweight title. And it's probably going to be at a catchweight if he does fight Miguel Cotto, which is bull. I don't like catchweights really. They kind of bother me in a way, depending on the situation. But he's probably would fight Miguel Cotto at a rematch for the middleweight title. Now, let's say he fights Miguel Cotto for a rematch for the WBC Lineal Championship. If he fights Cotto and defeats Cotto, he has one more fight left in in September, because that fight would take place in May. In September, after he was supposedly defeat Cotto, he doesn't have that many options if he decides to stay with the WBC strap at middleweight. A lot of people are going to be gunning for Floyd even more than ever, especially the monster at 160, Gennady Golovkin, Triple G. Triple G right now holds, I believe, 2 belts. I'm not exactly sure at middleweight. I know he holds the WBA. I think he holds a couple other like minor belts, but the big one that I know for sure is the WBA, and he holds another one. I forgot which one. He holds the interim belt for WBC, so he's the #1 contender. So whatever Cotto's next opponent is afterwards, Triple G gets a shot at it, I'm pretty sure. If not, I'm pretty sure they're going to make Cotto relinquish his belt. But if Floyd fights Cotto and defeats him, and then he has one more fight left in September, he could face Canelo Alvarez in another rematch, because Canelo by then should be up at middleweight because he's too big for his division. He can barely make the weight at 154 at super welterweight or light middleweight. So I'm pretty sure that would be the next big move, fighting Canelo Alvarez in a rematch at 160 for the middleweight title in September. Or he could fight Gennady Golovkin, depending on what happens with Canelo. If he takes a big loss, or if he loses to Gennady, then Floyd will have to face Gennady Golovkin. I heard a rumor that Floyd wants to fight him. I doubt it though. I really don't see anyone beating Gennady, not even Floyd, from 160 down. That is. But if let's say Canelo fights Gennady and then he loses, Gennady would be in the road to fight Floyd for the 160 belt in September, and that would be a big fight. But none of these fights are the Manny Pacquiao fight, which is a fight that we've been waiting for basically since 2009. How many years is that? That's like that's like 6 years in the making, which is ridiculous. Now, it would be fight Miguel Cotto in May for the WBC belt at middleweight, and then fight Canelo Alvarez in a rematch defending the belt, or depending on what happens to Canelo, it could be Gennady Golovkin. Now that's scenario 1. Scenario 2 would be he still fights Pacquiao after those 2 fights, because those 2 fights will end his Showtime contract. that he's under right now. After that, he's free to retire. He's not entitled to make any more fights if he doesn't choose to. What would be awesome is if he did that, fights Cotto, then Canelo or Gennady, and then has the fights with Manny Pacquiao. Now, Manny Pacquiao is set to retire in the end of 2016. Recently he did a 2 year extension with Top Rank, and in those 2 years he's gonna fight a total of 4 times, 2 times a year basically. And he usually fights around June and November of each year. So from April to June is his first fight, and then usually from November to December is the second fight. Now, with those two fights, Floyd fighting Cotto in May, and then let's just say Canelo or Gennady in September this year. Next year in 2016, both of them will be set to retire. They could end. They could have a grand finale facing each other. Or Mayweather could just fight Manny now twice and then retire. But that's the thing. We don't know what he's gonna do. He has literally everyone waiting on his move, and that's kind of ridiculous in my point of view. A fighter has never had this much power in the world of boxing. Floyd, I think he has too much power. He demands too much, and he controls too much in the game. And I know he worked his whole life for this. I guess you could say this position, this life, but he's doing it in a very bad manner in my point of view, because he's able to choose whichever opponent he wants, but he's utilizing that power in the wrong way, because instead of facing top contenders, in my point of view, he's facing fighters that could have gone away with. Like, I would have rather seen him fight Kell Brook than Maidana again, or Keith Thurman. Test himself with someone young, someone new, someone strong. You know, it's always about improving. Once you stop improving, that's when you stop. That's when you should stop, because then what do you got left to do? You're not challenging yourself. And I think Floyd could have done better in his recent opponents that he's faced. Now, this fight, this Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather giant fight thing, it affects a lot of fighters, more than them two. It affects a lot of things, actually. This affects Manny, Canelo, Khan, and many other fighters. All of these fighters are waiting on his move, especially if this fight goes through. 2015 will be the biggest year ever, because there are so many other fights that can be made based off this movement that is going to happen, that it is ridiculous. A lot of fights are on the line with this big move, and I don't think a lot of people realize that. They're just looking at Manny and Floyd, but I'm trying to look past that, and not because, I guess you could say, I'm tired of waiting, because I haven't lost faith in this fight. I still believe it could happen, and the reason being so is because it needs to happen. Every big fight between two of the biggest fighters in every era has happened. There's no way that this shouldn't happen right now. It has to. I think, like, history demands it. Imagine in boxing 10, 15, 20 years from now, we look back and say, oh, Floyd and Manny Pacquiao never fought each other. That's going to look horrible. If this fight does not go through, it will dramatically affect the sport of boxing. Really bad. And it would be a scar in the history of it, and it's going to be something that would take a while for us, for people that love boxing, to get through. This would plummet the boxing world deep in deep waters. Even though there's the rise of the heavyweights coming soon, which I feel like the heavyweights are gonna come back on the spot, especially after Deontay Wilder brought the title back to America, back home. I think there's a lot of big stuff coming in the future, boxing world-wise, which I would try to explain in the future from what I think is gonna happen. But this fight between Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather, it needs to happen. One way or another, it needs to happen. Whether it's sooner or later, it needs to happen. There's no way that it shouldn't. There's no way that it can't. But that is what I think is going to happen. I think if Floyd doesn't fight Manny, he's going to fight. The best move for him would be to fight Miguel Cotto at 160, go for another belt, another weight division, and then defend it against Canelo Alvarez if he's successful against whatever opponent he faces next. And then he could retire like that, which would be horrible if he doesn't face Manny, or face Manny afterwards. Those two things. That way he's securing his legacy. You see, Floyd has built himself, his persona, as being unbeatable because of that. Oh, if Manny defeats him right now, or if anyone defeats him that his stock would plummet dramatically. It would be horrible because he's built, his whole image is built as being undefeated, that no one can beat him. So think of it like this: if Manny faces him, right, and then destroys him, let's say in 3 rounds, and knocks him down like 3 times, like 1 round every time, and then no one wants to see a rematch because they don't think it's even worth it. Afterwards, whoever Mayweather faces is not gonna pay because they're gonna see, oh, see, Floyd was a joke the whole time. Just picked his opponent and got the easy wins. No one would want to see him afterwards. Now, that's the reason why I don't think he's gonna face Manny, because he has too much freedom, too much power right now to do whatever he wants, picking his opponents. He's gonna pick fighters that he know he's gonna have a good chance of beating, instead of facing his biggest match ever and have a potential loss. It makes more sense to do that at the end of your career when a loss wouldn't matter, because a loss now matters because he has 2 more fights left, and he could have more potentially if he chooses to stay. And the reason why I think he's gonna do this is because if he has 2 more fights and it's not Manny Pacquiao, or even if it is Manny Pacquiao and he retires after these 2 fights, Manny Pacquiao will outlast him in legacy because Manny still has 2 more fights after him. He's gonna last a whole year longer, so Manny's still gonna be relevant while Floyd is retired. And I don't think Floyd wants that, because Floyd Mayweather wants to be known as the best ever, TBE, and I don't think he's close to that. He needs to have Manny's name on that list as a win in order to be considered TBE, and possibly a bit more. In my personal opinion, I feel like Manny Pacquiao has a better legacy already than Floyd, no matter even if Floyd fights him or not. And it would make more sense for Floyd to fight Cotto than Canelo or Gennady, and then fight Manny Pacquiao for a finale, which would be, it's not the best thing for us fans. I wouldn't want that, but I feel like that's what is going to happen, because that is the best move for him to make right now. Those are the biggest financial gains, and also that comes with legacy. It's going to be a big event fighting Cotto again, and he's going to get the WBC belt out of it, facing Canelo Alvarez. Depending on what fight Canelo takes in the future, Canelo could get a WBC belt. I mean, the WBC. He could get a middleweight belt, and then Floyd could face him for that one, and then retire, or he could face Gennady for his. So there's a lot of movements in this big fight that could happen. As for Manny, I'll make another video of what could happen for him in the future. But for now, I guess I don't want to keep it too long, so I'm gonna end it here, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace.